Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon to Dr. Sa'ari and Madam Eliana. My name is Muhammad Yusof bin Muhammad Aziz. I'm from BET section 2/1. Today I want to present about my PSM1 titled Microstrip Monopole Antenna on Flexible Substrate for Future 5G Communication. My supervisor for this project is Dr. Zaki. For the first chapter is introduction. Microstrip patch antenna are a type of flat antenna that has been widely studied and advanced in the wireless communication system during the last 4 decades. After that, the problem statement. The researchers have been developed and modified various shapes and pattern of patch antenna, which is basically to enhance the use of microstrip planar antenna. The problem is when most microstrip planar antenna design have only provide a limited bandwidth of 500 MHz or less than that. Basically for this project, I go through 4 flow, which is first one is objective. This is because objective can know the flow for the project. After that, the methodology is the method used and designation for the project. Number 3 is result analysis. I do the observation and identify the result whether it is success or unsuccess for the software. Lastly, the conclusion. I can conclude the overall project and achieve the objective that I used to learn. First one is objective. Objective is to simulate the microstrip patch antenna on PCB with wide bandwidth that can be used in 5G application, which is to improve the bandwidth from the previous paper. After that, to simulate the antenna on different flexible substrates. After that, to implement a prototype of microstrip patch antenna and benchmark the outcome with recent trends, which is I implement into the PCB board. Before I implement on the PCB board, I have to construct the design on the software CST Studio. For the project scope, the project is focusing on the designation of the microstrip planar antenna to work on flexible substrates for the 5G application. The CST Studio Suite simulation software used to stimulate the design. So in this project, I use the CST Studio Suite 2019 for design the antenna. For the second chapter is literature review. For the literature review, I used to research, observe and improve the previous paper. So the research, I do the plenty research on the previous journal and papers and observe based on the experiment and discussion, and I try to improve from the experiment and I improve the disadvantage from the previous paper. For the comparison for this summary for the literature review based on some title, which is AC-shaped microstrip for 5G, PET based millimeter planar antenna, microstrip patch review, flexible substrate of planar antenna, transparent substrate on antenna for energy harvesting. Most of the previous paper use same like same software, which is CST Studio 2019, and I can get the some advantage and disadvantages from the previous paper, which is easy to fabricate, high cost or low cost, which is larger bandwidth or narrow bandwidth, and the gain from the experiment. For the chapter 3 is the methodology. methodology is a method that I use for this project. For the first, I designed the antenna using this ST software. After that, if the design is success in the software, so I proceed to fabricate the antenna on the PCB board or the ground on the ground plane. So after that, I analysis the result from the antenna, which whether it's a success or unsuccess. This is the flowchart for the project. First, I learn from the problem statement and try to search any objective for this project. After that, I research from the previous paper, which is the literature review. After that, I design the antenna using CSC software. Then if the design is success, so I can proceed to fabricate. If the design is not success, so I have to redesign on the CST until it will get the successful result, so I can fabricate and proceed for the prototype. So if the prototype can be used, I can proceed to the next presentation. If not success, I have to refabricate the design. So this is the three type of flexible substrate that I use for this project, which is Captain, PET and paper. After I do some research, I can compare the substrates with some properties, which is the electric constant, heat resistant and chemical resistant. For Captain HN, the electric constant is 3.5, the heat resistant is very excellent and chemical resistant is good. For PET, the electric constant is 3.0, the heat resistant is low and chemical resistant is good. For the paper, the dielectric constant is 3.5 and heat resistant is unavailable because paper is not resistant for heat at all, because it can burn easily. For chemical resistant is not available too, because paper cannot resist any chemical substance. So this is the preliminary result that I use for in CST Studio. So based on this comparison, I can see that the properties of Captain HN is better to use for fabricate the patch antenna, because it has the electric constant, higher electric constant, excellent heat resistant and good chemical resistant. So for CSC Studio, I use substrate for Captain HN. The ground plane I use for this design is copper, and the software to design this antenna is CST Studio 2019. After I design the patch antenna in the CSC software, so I can see the S parameter, which is the S101 parameter for the Captain, is shown in the graph. So it's better than PET and paper. So from this PSM1, I can conclude that the design in comparison to existing flexible substrate based antennas, the antenna has been built and optimized for gain and efficiency with enhanced performance. So the proposed project, I used to improve the previous paper to use the flexible, because it's very low cost substrates and low cost for antenna. After that, the comparison between the flexible substrate can be determined based on some properties. Based on properties, we can conclude that for the flexible, we use the Captain HN as a better substrate. So the references, this is some references for this previous paper. I have the advantage because some of previous paper that I research is my supervisor papers, which is Dr. Zaki. So this is easy to me for refer to him for his previous paper, so I can do a research more better, because I can refer to him. So this is Gantt chart for PSM1. I can follow the flow from the Gantt chart until this week, from the week 1 until week 14. This is no problem for me to follow my Gantt chart. I think that's all for me for my presentation in PSM1. Thank you and Assalamualaikum. Stay safe.